The Satanic Panic was a period of moral panic within mainly the rural parts of the United States, but it was quite nationwide and worldwide even in the late and mid-80s. It was basically a period where everyone was terrified of Satanists being within communities and committing atrocious rituals and murdering children and eating the hearts of virgins and such on and such on and such on. It was a big thing, a big issue. Churches were really avidly against it. Newspapers would report on it. Any kid that went missing for more than a day was assumed to have been taken by a cult and sacrificed to Lucifer at midnight. People began to stop celebrating Halloween for a few years. It was a really, really weird time. Because now, I have no doubt that there are these sort of nefarious individuals out there who do commit certain ritualistic crimes and do obey these very old, trad, pagan deities and do these certain things, but nothing happened in that time to spur this on. There was no catalyst event. There was no rise in these crimes. There wasn't even any evidence any of these crimes were happening out of proportion. Like, seriously. People just began panicking about this from nowhere. There wasn't, one teen who went missing and was found out, and there wasn't a huge web unspiraling. There was no reason for this huge panic. It just happened out of nothing. And it was almost as if, and I say almost with heavy emphasis because it was almost certainly was, that people just wanted to backtag and push away certain things they disliked and went against their social norms, yet they didn't have a means to, so they just said devils, Satanists, and they used this as a scapegoat for their pushing out of certain things. Think of the West Memphis 3, I've discussed this case before, that happened at like the peak of this period, and that was a murder case where more likely than not 3 teenagers didn't commit the crime but were found guilty because they were emo goth / which was a prejudice stemming from the Satanic Panic. It was this belief, at this time, if you were found to have scribbled, the little upside down cross or the 6-point triangle in your notebook, you could genuinely, for that, be sent into a psychiatric institution. People were so scared and frightened and terrified over nothing. Nothing caused the panic. People caused the panic and stemmed their own fuel by believing things that weren't of detriment or harm or anything, that weren't causing any actual satanic ritualistic crimes, to be doing that. These crimes weren't happening, but they associate these things with these crimes and thus saw these things as terrifying and were terrified by them because they were committing these crimes that weren't happening. It was an incredibly weird time, and it's a really interesting thing to look into if you're interested in that sort of collective social psyche, to see how mindsets are so dependent on the communal view. When people start to look at a certain type of person and think, yes, he's a wrong un, he's a Satanist, he is, definitely one of these people we should get rid of, then you want to get rid of them, even if you don't abide by that obligation yourself, if you don't agree with that mindset. If everyone in your town starts pushing for that one person to be viewed as a wrong un, one point or another you're going to eventually view them as a wrong un. It's just so weird how we can be so easily corrupted when everyone is thinking and agreeing on one thing, when everyone is pushed to believe something. There was no cults, there was no murders, there was no reason to believe these people were what they thought they were. The real Satanists weren't the teenagers wanting to play death metal. The real Satanists weren't the people who wore eyeliner. The real Satanists weren't the people who dropped out of school and ended up doing drugs. It wasn't them, yet they got the brunt of it. because people wanted to disassociate themselves with what they deemed as failures. And the only way to asocialize that was to scapegoat them as Satanists. They needed a reason, they needed a push, and that's what happened.